Hey y'all, welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about how our drip irrigation system works, all the way from the dam in the creek, through the predator, up through the sand filters and out to the field. And I get a lot of questions asked about it, and I know that can be kind of a complicated, or it can seem complicated if you've never done it before. But it's actually pretty simple and not nearly as big a deal or as expensive as some people think. So I think I'm going to give you a quick little tour of our progress on our crops so far. We're here sitting right in the middle of May, and then we'll get right to getting the pump fired up, and actually we're going to run some potassium nitrate through the drip to some of the crops down the hill. So I'll show you how the fertilize injector and everything works. So you see we got some sugar snap peas coming along here. We hope they're going to make before it gets too hot. Some cabbage, different stages of growth, so we don't have to pull it all at one time. The same deal with our broccoli here. A little bit of cauliflower, try not to go too wild with it. Cucumbers are coming along nicely, should be blooming very soon. Snap beans are doing okay. Got a little bit of drift issue with some herbicide and killed a few of those, but I think we're still going to have a decent crop. A few years ago I started growing sweet corn on plastic mulch, and yes, it is an expensive way, a more expensive way of growing it. But I believe the quality and the yield you get out of it is just can't compare. Here's our half runner crop. It's all strung up, ready to get it. All the row middles up in this side of the field need to be sprayed. We've got some pink-eyed purple hull peas, really popular for us here in western central North Carolina. Some okra coming along. Moderate stand on that. Then we got squash and October beans, and then we get into the 3 blocks of tomatoes here. Different stages of growth, all different varieties. We just got them suckered today, so they should really shoot up quickly, and we'll be getting a string on those here in the next couple of days. This is our 6.5 horsepower Predator 2-inch pump. They make a 3-inch version, but it's still 6.5 horsepower, so I really don't understand the advantage there. Because if you're trying to make pressure, it takes power to do that. So I've had several of these pumps. One of them, these things are bad about giving problems with the oil pressure sensor. Predators, all Predators, no matter what they're on. I don't recommend you unhooking it. I threw a rod through the side of one with by unhooking that one time. They will use some oil sitting and pulling a heavy load like these pumps do, especially for pushing very far. This is a very economical way to get started. I think this pump costs a little over 200 bucks, and I mean, if you're watering any acreage at all, if you can get a year or two out of one, that's a couple $100 well spent. Because if you go buy you a Honda, which is very comparable, I think you're looking at about 3 to 4 times that, depending on what you get. This one has got a homemade aluminum tank on top of it. You could use a boat gas tank, but they're a little bit spendy. But this is just a homemade aluminum fuel tank that holds like 6-7 gallons, I think, maybe a little more, but it'll run 14-16 hours on that amount of gas. I do recommend getting a really good suction hose, because if your suction hose has any pinhole air leak, your pump will lose prime and it'll make you want to pull your hair out. So this is one of the suction hoses like you can buy at Tractor Supply. They're pretty cheap. They might sell these at Harbor Freight as well, I don't know, but this is a really good one. there from Tractor Supply. It's just from down here, I think this pump right straight out of the pump makes 60 or 70 pounds of pressure. Blue lay flat will stand 60, 70 pounds of pressure without any problem. Particularly the Vinaflow that's made in Hong Kong, maybe? I think that's right. The Vinaflow brand is a really good brand. And then Sunflow, which I prefer to use, is made in America. I buy it from Rainflow, and it's much less expensive than Vinaflow. I have found that it stretches worse, so that's one thing you'll find when you put 70 pounds of pressure on this blue lay flat all season and you have to cut a mouse bite out of it somewhere and put a coupler in it. It's going to be probably a good solid 1/4 of an inch too big for that coupler, and it's always going to have a small leak there. But anyway, my pond has this nice pond meal growing on top of it. That's pretty to look at. That's what's the word I'm looking for? It's a parasitic, I guess you'd call it, weed, kind of like water lilies that will take over, and it is spread by waterfowl. So when we first built this pond, it was beautiful and clean, and after a couple of years of wood ducks, we now have pond meal covering every square inch of this body of water. And it don't look like there's much water here, but if you look off the back side of our dam, if I can get over here without getting snake bit, you will see how deep this creek bed is. So if that gives you any idea, we could pump with a big pump for a long time out of this without ever pulling it down. So we should be in good shape for a long time on water. But I'm gonna get this sucker fired up, check the oil fired up, and we'll get back up the hill and get some fertilizer running. Somebody commented on that last video, I believe it was, and was asking about pumping water about 900 foot, I believe was the question. Or maybe it wasn't a question, maybe it was a statement. But anyway, I'm not sure exactly how far we're pumping water here. I'm guessing somewhere around 500 foot, 600 foot to the top of the hill. You can, I don't know how good you can see it in the camera, but there is a transformer on top of a power pole. That is roughly where we're pumping water to from where I'm standing here at the creek. Yes, I do have a 4-inch PTO pump right here that needs a primer valve in it, and it'll pump a ton of water. But the problem is it pumps more water than I need, and it takes a big tractor to pull it. I've got a John Deere 4440 that I used to run it off of, but it would burn, depending on how much I ran it, you could run through 70 gallons of diesel fuel in that tractor. It seemed like in a very short amount of time pulling that pump, because believe it or not, it actually it didn't pull the tractor down, but it was enough of a load that you could hear it when the pump caught prime. So just with a 100 horsepower tractor, 140 horsepower tractor running at 540 RPMs, that's not practical for the size of operation that we are right now. If you've been watching some recent videos, you've heard me talk about it, that we buried some PVC last year. I'm kind of on the fence, almost kicking myself for not burying it all the way to the creek. You can see the wood line is where the pond is, and we've got blue lay flat run all the way up here, goes in the riser, and then goes up to the top of the hill where it's going through the filters, and are coming back out of a riser, going through filters, and then going to the field. When we're watering the strawberries down here or these lower fields, then I put the sand filters right here and we run blue lay flat back down the hill. The reason I didn't bury 2-inch PVC all the way to the creek is there's two reasons. One, I think we may change the shape of this field a little bit in time, and I don't know where the dirt's going to come from, where it's going to go to. I didn't want to end up with pipe either digging it up or having it 8 foot underground. And two, PVC is extremely expensive right now, thanks to all the excellent leadership in this country and all the inflation of everything. But another reason is I think when we get to the point of burying PVC all over the farm, that we're going to run either 4-inch or 3-inch from the creek up through the middle of the field, and then split out into 2-inch that runs in different directions, so that we'll be able to change valves, have it all buried, and have risers at different places in the field. And this farm is still a work in progress. If you recall, if you've been following along last year, I can't remember how many videos I did on that, if many at all, but when we just started farming this last year and cleared it, there used to be an old log barn that had rotted down that was sitting right here where these strawberries are, and there were cedar trees and just scrub trees and junk and briars all over all these fields that we're tending now. So it is a work in progress, but we're making some progress, but we haven't quite got everything dialed in the way we want it yet, and we're not sure exactly how we want it, so I'm afraid to spend too much money and have to come back and change it. So that said, we just buried 2-inch up the road where we knew this was the way it was gonna need to be. So it's nice to have a little bit of PVC buried, if not all of it, because believe it or not, this little run of PVC right here helps a tremendous amount, because when you run blue lay flat through the woods or through the outskirts of a field, low traffic areas, and it gets dry weather, the mice really give you a fit on it. So if you can keep your blue lay flat just in the field where you're kind of spraying around it and keeping it fairly clean, you'll have a lot less trouble out of it. So this is just a set of filters that belongs on a swimming pool, and there's several companies around that build this setup right here. I think that they may all come from Rainflow Irrigation, and other people sell them, but Rainflow builds this setup, I know for sure. And also Berry Hill Irrigation sells a lot of drip supplies. They sell a lot of Rainflow stuff, so that kind of leads me to believe that theirs comes from Rainflow as well. Real simple. The water comes from the field. It goes in this side. You can see I got a gauge on here, and we're losing a ton of pressure coming up that hill. That was another thing I was going to say. I'm not sure exactly how much rise I've got here, but that little Predator is just barely enough pumped for us. So once the system gets full, it will make between 30 and 40 pounds on the inlet side. This is the fertilizer injector. This is just a Mozzie Venturi injector, the simplest and least expensive type. This one's actually too big for 2-inch setup, but I had a lot of problems. I had a smaller one on here and it kept getting stopped up, so I had this one laying around from a different irrigation setup and I swapped it. Since then I have not had the Venturi get stopped up. If you've got barrels sitting out in the field, a lot of times they get trash in them and they're bad about stopping up your Venturi. Mozzie does come with a screen on the bottom. You can see mine does not have one. That will get stopped up as well and drive you crazy. So I found it works better for me to have a larger Venturi, as long as you can get enough water flowing by it to make it suck up the chemical or fertilize, then it'll work just fine. And the way that this system works right here is we're just going to turn we're going to turn that valve on and that one on, and then we're going to start cranking this gate valve down until it starts diverting enough water up through here by the venturi that it starts vacuuming the liquid up this hose. That has to be before the sand filters, otherwise you're going to stop up your drip tape potentially with whatever you're injecting. On this side, I can't really explain how these three-way valves work, but this is how you reverse the flow and clean your filters or flush them. So when you don't have a ton of flow, you're better off to turn your field off like this so that you're sending all your water through. I've got this on a hose so I'm not making a mud hole where I'm standing, and it doesn't really take very long at all to flush them. It starts off looking kind of clean and then gets muddy like chocolate milk, and then it'll get right clean again and you can switch and flush the other filter. This is potassium nitrate. This is what we're going to run today on the corn, beans, squash, everything down in the lower half of this field. And if you're not familiar with potassium nitrate, you need to be. This is water soluble, semi-water soluble. It does not dissolve very good, but you can get it dissolved and ran. It just takes patience. 13,046, so a lot of potassium, and it took me a long time to learn that if you're going to grow an abundance of good crops in a high enough yield to turn a profit, you got to pour the potassium to it. So it's kind of a low nitrogen analysis. So if you're trying to like pump up your sweet corn, you're going to need to go, well, you don't have to, but you may be better off to go with rotate it with some calcium nitrate. But the potassium nitrate is great for pretty much everything. Tomatoes really thrive off of potassium nitrate. They also need some calcium nitrate to prevent bottom rot and so forth, and give them the calcium that they need. But this potassium is great for beans. You will really see an impact on your beans. It's low nitrogen, so it's not going to stretch them and make more plant than bean. It's going to give them the potassium that they need to really lay the pods on heavy. So depending on what we're growing, I run somewhere around a 50-pound bag of this per acre per week. That's about what most crops need, and some I give less to and some more. But anyway, let's get this, see if we can get this mixed up and get it started running. If you buy this little set of filters from Berry Hill or Rainflow, I think you're looking at a couple $1,000, give or take. I can't remember. It's been a while since I've looked at the catalog, but it's not going to come. It's not going to come with this valve on it. They're just more than likely, I think, if I remember correctly, it just comes up, over, and down. This is a great little addition right here, putting this valve on a piece of hose, because it gives you a place to fill your water barrel for injecting. And if you're watching this and you're organic, all of this is still very relevant if you're trying to run fish emulsion or whatever you're needing to give your crops if you're growing on black plastic. So I'm just going to do a quick walkthrough. I try to do it anyway, but especially when I'm running a chemical or fertilize, I like to walk through and make sure don't have any fittings that are blown apart or any geysers, because I don't want to pollute or waste expensive products. So we're just going to check everything, and you can see I just got plain old blue lay flat run to the field. So I've got kind of a plethora, a mixture of things that we've used over the years. This is a blue lay flat manifold. It's an oldie goldie. We haven't used that in several years. Got a small mouse hole there. This is called Flex Net from Netafim. It works okay. It's a lot more expensive system, and much like anything you use, the places where the connectors screw on is not always going to line up. They sell these plugs that you put in for like drive roads, but basically it's just got a little connector that you screw into a threaded fitting everywhere there's a row. Oh, that's less than ideal. I see why that was the way it was. All right, we've got some minor leaks, but it looks like only water coming out in a big way is out of the emitters. That's good. All right, we're ready to start injecting. I'm just about to overrun my barrel. All right, so this is how this works. Let's see if you can get a good idea here. Yeah, I got it turned up a little bit too hot right now. Back off of this just a little bit. Depending on the size of your injector and the volume of water you're pumping, size of your field, you can just about suck this barrel dry in 5 minutes if you turn it up too much. That's about the way I like it to run. Looks like I pretty well got most of my potassium dissolved, and we are siphoning this potassium nitrate solution out of this barrel and sending it out through the field. And I believe I pretty much covered everything. If I didn't and you got more questions, drop them in the comments. I do try to get to all the comments. And I got one more thing that I'm going to show you for those of y'all that made it to the end. Little bonus for you. If you're growing more than a garden, you're going to have to spray. It's just the unfortunate reality. It's one of my least favorite things to do because it keeps me away from my family and the supper table at least one night a week. So whether you're organic and you're spraying OMRI listed copper, pyganic, neem oil, you name it, or whether you're like me, I'm getting ready to spray some chlorothalonil, some Captan on strawberries and blackberries, and some Mustang Max on some beans. No matter what you're spraying, you're still going to have to spray, and you're going to have to do it a lot. And if you're small scale like I am and you don't have big elaborate setups, it takes a while to fill a sprayer, especially if you're spraying 50 gallons to the acre. If you're filling it out with a 3/4 water hose, that kind of stinks. So this little tip is something that you want to leave out of your gap audit. Spraying with surface water is kind of frowned upon. I guess it's really not that big a deal if your water's tested and it's clean, but anyway. So this riser here coming from the creek, and you could do this other ways, but I got my pump running. It's going to run for the next 6-8 hours probably, and I have this hose with a valve on the end of it and a valve right here. And when I get ready to start spraying tonight, this afternoon, all I've got to do is hook that little guy up, pull right up here with my tractor, stick this, oh, let's turn it on. My hose does have a small leak. Stick this in the sprayer. And voila, you can fill up a sprayer on the back of a tractor in a real big hurry like that. So anyway, just a little bonus tidbit for you there. That's how I don't waste an extra 2 hours when I'm already spending a lot of time spraying. But I appreciate you guys watching. Like I say, if you got any questions, leave them in the comments. Try to get to them all. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.